everybody, it's time for episode number 2 of Tater'S Tales. Now this episode, this little story I'm about to tell you happened probably about 12 or 13 years ago, something like that. And here in Louisiana we do a lot of different hunting and things, and with this time we were going to go squirrel hunting. And when I say squirrel hunting, I mean just we don't take shotguns, we usually take a 22 so that it's very fair, that it's harder to hit a squirrel with a 22. So anyway, those of you that don't condone hunting, I apologize in advance, but here in Louisiana a lot of people do hunt. It's kind of a family thing that everybody does, and anyway, this happened when we were hunting. So anyway, it was probably October or so, right after squirrel season started. And so there was a group of us that were going to go squirrel hunting. It was myself, my sister, her husband, my brother-in-law, my father, and my brother-in-law's father. And so we went to this refuge place, this wildlife refuge that you're allowed to go squirrel hunting on. And we all get out there pretty early in the morning, and I had just bought some new camouflage gear that was on sale at the local sporting goods store. And just out of pure coincidence, this pattern of camouflage that I was wearing, not this that I have on, but I'll insert a picture of it right here. Now you can see here this guy is pretty hard to see. Well, that's kind of like the camouflage I was wearing at the time. Now when we squirrel hunt, we do what's called still hunting, where we sit under a tree and wait for a squirrel to come by. A lot of times we don't get any, but it's more about the experience with the family than it is about actually getting a squirrel. If you get a squirrel, then that's great. We got something to make some dumplings with. So anyway, if you've seen Duck Dynasty, you know a lot of people down here squirrel hunt. And I live in the same town they live in, and it's just something we all like to do. So anyway, get back to the story. We went to this refuge, and there was a big pipeline that goes straight down, and then there was kind of some offshoot trails on either side of it that went into various types of trees. There's pine trees and hardwoods. Well, typically you want to get to where there's some hardwoods at, because that's where the squirrels like to be. They like to be where they can get food, get the acorns and stuff like that. So my dad and the rest of them went off on the left side of the pipeline down there, and I kind of peeled off and went to the right. And then my brother-in-law, which is my sister's husband, went on down several hundred yards and went in on the same side that I did. We typically don't like to get too close to each other, just for safety's sake. So anyway, I'm down in there hunting, and I was sitting under a tree and sat there for probably about 2 hours, and I didn't see a doggone thing. There was a few times I thought there was some bushes shaking or some leaves shaking up in the top of the tree, and I didn't see anything at all. So anyway, I sat there. I was just enjoying being out there. You know, it was all quiet. The leaves were on the ground. It was just great. So I'm sitting there for probably about 3 hours or so, and I hear this crunching noise coming. So I kind of perked up, because I thought, hey, I might see a deer, even though it's not deer season. Couldn't take him. It's still nice to be able to see one come by, you know. So I perked up a little bit and looked, and lo and behold, here comes brother-in-law, stomping through the thing. He had this big old long chair and stuff he's dragging along. He's making enough noise to wake the dead. And he comes by through there, and he walked within 5 feet of me and didn't even see me. I was blended in so good that he just walked right on by. I just stayed still and let him go by. So he probably went about 400 or 500 yards. Probably not that far, probably 200 or 300 yards, I'd say, on down the way there. It kind of opened up a little bit, and I was looking at some hardwoods that were about 50 yards out so that I could see the tops of the trees. So anyway, he sits out there, and then he stops right there and goes to sit down. Well, I guess he didn't think I was there or anything like that. He didn't see me, so he thought he had the area pretty much to himself. So he sits his chair down in the middle of this clearing and starts pouring himself a cup of coffee. I could smell that coffee. The wind was blowing towards me. and I could smell that coffee, and boy, it smelled so good. And I was like, well, I'm ready to get back to get some coffee. It was probably about 9 o'clock in the morning about this time. And so since he went down there and parked, I thought, well, let me just move over to this side of the tree. So I moved over on the other side of the tree to look the opposite direction, so that way there wouldn't be any chance if I did see a squirrel that I would shoot in his direction. So I'm sitting there and I'm just kind of looking at things, and I was pretty much reserved to the fact that we weren't going to see anything today. So it was okay. It was all good. As long as you're out there and enjoying Mother Nature, then that's what it's all about. So probably about 45 minutes after he'd went by, I started smelling that coffee, and then I smelled something else. I was like, what in the heck is that smell? So I'm eased around to look back at him. It smelled bad. When I looked back at him, all I saw was a giant white butt bent over down there in the clearing, and he was letting the morning coffee kicked in. If everybody drinks coffee, they know that the coffee kicked in, and man, it was coming downwind. He didn't think anybody in the world saw him, and he sat there, and I just thought, oh no, here we go. So he did that, and I guess whatever, and got back in his chair and moved it on down out of the way some, I guess, because he didn't want to be close to that. So I sat there for about another 30 or 45 minutes and went on ahead and started heading back to the meetup spot, because we were all supposed to meet back at a certain time. And I just couldn't get that big white butt out of my vision. I couldn't forget it. It was just like, golly, I can't just... not what I was expecting to look at when I seen down there. I figured something was up. I thought maybe he had farted or something and it was coming down. Well, he wasn't farting. The morning coffee kicked in, and buddy, he let her rip, Tater Chip. And so I eased back down in there, and I was like, they said, did you see any? I said, no, I didn't see anything, but I did see a couple of things. And they said, what is it? Would you see a deer, or what'd you see? I said, well, I was a full moon, y'all. I said, you know, sometimes you can see the moon in the daytime. Well, I saw a full moon. And they said, man, that must have been awesome. I said, no, it pretty much sucked. So anyway, that was my quick story about how having your camouflage to be too good can be a bad thing. So anyway, just want to wish everybody in the drone community much love, and want y'all to all just remember each other, take care of each other. We got some members in the group that could use your prayers and thoughts, so send them some good prayers and thoughts. And everybody, be good to each other. As much love to all of you, and Tater's out. See y'all later.